Have you ever experienced one of these scenarios? You are getting ready to go out and you're putting on different outfits. And every one that you put on, you're like, this looks terrible. And that looks terrible. And then you realize that you feel really bad about how you look and you actually decide not to go. Or you decide to go out, but you're not going to wear that one thing which makes you look kind of fat. You're going to wear something a little different, something that hides the imperfections of your body. I'm sure that there are millions of little scenarios like that a lot of people experience. This is a very common occurrence for women. I'm sure there are equivalent scenarios for men that have to do with body image. But this particular episode, I'm going to highlight perhaps the universality of the experience that women have with their bodies, with how we perceive our bodies and how we expect to be perceived by others, and how much that dictates our behavior, how much it influences whether we feel confident or not. I decided to do this episode because somebody messaged me asking to talk about this, because for her, this is something that she's been dealing with, and she has been observing other women dealing with it, especially women who've gone through childbirth and their bodies have changed, and they've observed that they're not getting the same amount of dances, the same amount of attention that they used to before. Or maybe it's age-related. Some women complain about not getting as many dances as they used to when they were younger. The awareness that your face looks different than it used to, or you have more wrinkles, you have more gray hair, and the awareness that men prefer younger. They prefer a youthful body. So all of that is an awareness that we hold as dancers coming into tango. As I was preparing for this episode, I kept coming back to the actual words body image and thinking about what is it that informs my body image. I'll tell you, growing up, my reference points were the culture surrounding me and my family. And within my family, there was always an issue around weight and struggling with bad nutrition, things like that. It's not a very uncommon challenge, but growing up, I was overweight and was very critical of that, and always wanted to be skinnier. And my reference point on the opposite side was the American culture that I suddenly was immersed in the 90s, which those of you who were teenagers at that time, if you think about the standard of beauty portrayed in movies and MTV music videos, in the magazines, the image was very much of a petite, very skinny, very lanky body type. That was the standard of beauty. Kate Moss was the ruling queen at the time. And I never fit that. And I always wanted to. So my body image growing up sort of developed in response to these two influences. On the one hand, kind of poor eating habits and challenges around body weight. On the other hand, this idealistic, kind of very exaggerated standard of thinness for women that I just could never see myself fitting. And so what would happen is I wanted to look the way I was seeing the magazines look, but if I put on those clothes, if I tried on any of, I guess, that fashion. First of all, it didn't fit. Secondly, it looked bizarre. And of course, there was a lot of judgment, which did that come up when I started tango? Of course. When I first was dancing tango, I was so self-conscious about my body, and I only wore very baggy things. And it wasn't until I went to Buenos Aires and bought my very first Roxana Vincelli dress. I had this very transformative experience of wearing that dress for the first time and really feeling like, oh my God, my body is naked and people are going to think I'm weird because my body is shaped weird, because I'm still identifying as, my friend said, identifying as a fat person. You know, like if you grow up having a weight issue, I think even if you don't have that issue anymore, it still sort of creeps up in different ways. And for me, it's very cyclical throughout my monthly cycle that I will have a different perception of my body and what it looks like. So the image that I see in the mirror is different at certain times of the month than at other times of the month. So you might be aware of these influences in your own life that are kind of similar. Those are universal influences of the family relationship around food. And then on the other side is the cultural influence that comes from just what you see around you on social media, in magazines, on TV, and your favorite shows. Of course, the physical changes of your body is another input of information. And we are not the same after childbirth. We are not the same after menopause. We're not the same as we age, right? We have a difference in the features. Now, whether those differences are bad or good, that's where a lot of our beliefs get to be played out. And a lot of times for women, I feel like unless something challenges those beliefs, we'll just allow those beliefs to continue. And so I meet a lot of women who just say, well, I'm just getting older. And because I'm getting older, that means I'm less attractive. So all of the influences that we have that have to do with our body image is something that is ongoing throughout our life. It's also something that's going to be triggered when we dance tango. And tango is probably like the most perfect trigger for these kinds of issues, because when you as a woman starting tango perhaps in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and you go to a Milonga and you see these beautiful young women and the men all want to be dancing with them, you will have those feelings come up. And it's a very tricky spot to be in as a newcomer, or if you've been there for a while and you've just been observing these kinds of things. It's very easy to see that as proof of the thing that we're afraid of about ourselves, that there is this fact that you're not as attractive anymore since you've gained that weight or since you've lost your youthful appearance. That's the fear. But there is another source of influence that I think you will guess what it is. I talk a lot about it, and it's your own focus. Because when you can remember in that moment when you doubt yourself and you doubt your body, if you can remember the truth that really what matters about your dance is not how you look. It really matters how you feel physically, and it matters how you move. So if you feel that insecurity that comes up, your focus can then help you do something more beneficial, more informed by the truth of the matter rather than by your insecurity that's always going to be there. If you're listening to this and you're like, I really feel that my size or how I look compared to what I used to look like or my age is what's preventing me from getting the dances I want, I encourage you to look around you and see if you can recognize examples of women just like you getting the dances that you want. They're out there. This is what I started noticing. And I started watching these women closely. Some of them I've gotten to know over the years, women who I really admire and watch from the sidelines a lot of times and marvel at how free they are, how confident they are, how much they embody something very unique. They also, a lot of times, are not women who fall into any specific body image. Most of them actually are very particularly unique to themselves. So after watching and talking and asking a lot of questions around, like, what is it that they're doing to attract that? This is what it boiled down to. That in tango, there's a different kind of beauty that is attractive beyond the surface. We typically think of body image as the surface outline of the body, right? But as a dancer, what people are watching is more how you move, the elegance of your movement. And when we're talking about the quality of this elegance and body language, it encompasses a lot of different pieces that are the building blocks of the actual dance. We're talking posture, alignment. So one of the common denominators among these women that I noticed is their posture all the time was really powerful. I realized for myself too that I had postural tendencies that had to do with me trying to hide my body. So I used to sit with my arms crossed in front of my body and I would kind of slouch. So little by little, watching other women who emanated a certain quality that I wanted to embody, it helped me see different details about my own posture and how I tend to do certain things very reflexively, very unconsciously, because I have certain insecurities about my body. A lot of women are insecure about their bellies. And there's a lot of body language that develops around that, of like pulling your shirt over your belly or hiding it, or putting your arms over your belly, or not being able to sit without putting a pillow on top of your belly. Like I've had that. So when you sit up straight, it changes the way you experience your body, and it puts you face to face with those feelings, those insecurities about, well, I shouldn't sit up straight because my belly is too big, or my breasts are not big enough, or whatever. Like that's what it comes down to. You have this fear, like I don't have anything to show, so I shouldn't sit up straight. That's the feeling I had at first. But that's basically what you have to kind of go through over and over again and decide to sit up straight no matter what. You know, sit up straight even when you don't feel like it. And it's kind of a rigorous practice in this way, emotionally, that you'll choose to still present your body in a beautiful way, regardless of how you might perceive it, knowing that your perception is fueled by all this unconscious influence. But when you choose to sit up tall and to sit up with good posture, you're doing that because you know your body looks better. It does. There's no question about that, right? You can feel the difference in someone else's body. And I remember a conversation with a friend of mine in Buenos Aires who is very tall German guy, like very gruff, very manly. And he was talking about women in general. And one thing, he dropped this comment. He said, my favorite moment is when I see women right before they take the embrace, they stand up tall and they reach up. And he described in detail how that profile, that line of the woman's back and how the head looked. And he was very clear that it wasn't about the size of the woman, it was just the posture. And that after the dance, he would notice how women would just sort of deflate their posture and round the back and start adjusting their clothing. And then when it was time to dance again, they would again sort of extend. And that was the thing for him as a guy that he would marvel at. It was beautiful to him to watch that. I think it's very much like that for most people, that yes, we're all drawn to the veneer, of course. We'll always be attracted to beautiful proportions in someone's face or body. But there's all this other beauty that we get, that we derive, that we absorb when we see a body moving well, when we see a body with good posture, moving at ease, being relaxed, moving confidently. It feels good to watch somebody move with ease because that's what resonates for us. That's how we want to feel inside of ourselves. And I think that's the important part, that we communicate with our posture, with how we move, with our body language. So paying attention to those things in yourself when you're at the Milonga is one way that you can apply that focus to your own body image. Now, the second thing that I observed in these women is the facial expressions. Facial expressions are probably the second biggest driver of whether a person is going to engage with you or not. When I see someone on the dance floor and I see them dancing beautifully and I decide, oh, I'm curious, I'm going to see if I can capaceo them. The next thing is going to be, I'm going to look for them. And if I see them sitting up, let's say they have good posture, but their facial expression is very, the resting bitch face kind of expression, which I've talked about before, because I'm really good at it. Some people, when their face is at rest, have an expression as if they're upset. It's a fact. And I've talked to other dancers who know this about themselves. So for a long time, I was not aware that that was me as well. And over the years, I kept hearing people telling me that I'm intimidating. And I was like, why? I don't understand why people think I'm so intimidating. But eventually I deduced that a lot of it had to do with my facial expressions. I would assume that my face is just relaxed and calm and has a peaceful demeanor, but other people actually would read it as me being upset. So I had to be more mindful of my face in general. It's not that you need to smile, have like a plastered smile on your face all the time. That looks really fake too. But I love how my friend described it. It's like you're smizing, which is smiling with your eyes. And it's just this feeling in your face that at your eyes, you're starting to smile. And when you do that, what I feel is kind of like my whole face opens up and pulls back. Like the sense is that I'm more engaged with my facial muscles. I'm not smiling, but my face is just a little bit more animated. And I do think for myself, I have to tell myself, be a little bit more ready to smile than not. Like allow your face to rest in that space where even though you might not feel your best and you might feel like nobody's going to dance with you and you're upset because the scale went up this morning. But still, you engage your face because your face is part of your posture. It goes hand in hand. So allowing your face to have more of that expressive energy about it rather than completely at rest where it's more of like a droopy sensation, which I love that feeling in my face when I can just allow my face to rest. But at the Milonga, it is a little bit more like, okay, you gotta shine, And so the facial expressions are very much part of that. The third piece that a lot of the dancers, a lot of these women are using really well is clothing. Using clothing as a way of expressing who you are, not as a way of getting the dances and wearing something because it's hot and that's what guys like. That's how I used to think of clothing. The hotter the skirt, the hotter the dress, the more dances I would get. That's the advice I got early on. That's what I believed, and that's what I did. But I think long term, it's much more interesting to see dancers who have their own style of clothing that they enjoy. And here's the key, that makes you feel amazing. So when I was wearing all those Roxana Vincelli dresses, I liked the way it felt at first, but eventually it just didn't feel like I was comfortable and secure in my body, and it changed the way I moved. So if I was fretting over whether the skirt was riding up too high and whether people can see my ass cheeks hanging out, like that would change how I moved, right? Or if my dress had a shoulder strap that kept sliding off, that meant I would change how I moved in my embrace. Those little things about your clothing are so important, because I see this all the time where women will wear clothing or shoes that look really great, but that make you move in a unelegant way. It might be the heels are too high and you're too uncomfortable. So the movement actually looks very clumsy, but the heels look good. And it can be the same with skirts or dresses. Sometimes I see women wear dresses that are too tight and it's obviously cutting into their range of motion, but it looks really hot. So those trade-offs, they're not as successful, I would say, when you sacrifice your body's comfort for an aesthetic, it works against you. What I think is really much more effective is when you wear clothing that, first of all, doesn't restrict your movement in any way. This is why I've completely shifted to only wearing pants. Sometimes I'll wear a skirt, but like a very loose kind of skirt. But pants and stretchy clothing, especially clothing that's stretchy around the belly, around your chest. So anytime I see a woman wearing a corset, I mean, it is, of course, very beautiful. Corsets are incredibly alluring and create that beautiful hourglass shape, sure. But it's also so uncomfortable, and it changes how you dance, and your dance actually doesn't look as good as it could if your body was allowed to move with ease. So choosing clothing that allows you to move with ease and expresses your personality. So I've known some dancers who, they really get to play with their color choices and patterns and accessorizing and sort of playing with their look. And that always stands out. Of course, it stands out for men, especially if I see men doing that, playing with their look and accessorizing. That's always attractive. But for women, instead of thinking of it as like, oh, I need to dress up and look a certain way, and my sensuality and my sexuality only can be expressed in this way, right? Roxana Vincelli dresses, it's got to be this hot number that I used to fit in 5 years ago. But really, there are so many more options now for women's fashion, for clothing that's both attractive and sensuous and makes your body look good, but also very comfortable in terms of how you move in it. When it comes to even clothing that a lot of the tango designers are making now, they are listening to that feedback and they're creating clothing that accounts more and more for the fact that most women look different from the idealized body type. But it doesn't mean that you cannot move well and look beautiful in the clothing. It really is the fault of the clothing industry that tortured us for the last 20 to 40 years about what we're supposed to look like and what the clothes we're supposed to be wearing should look like on our bodies. And I think now we get to redefine that culturally, and in tango too. There's a lot of room to experiment and explore that side of you. When it comes to that focus of like, okay, I feel bad about my body, I feel fat, I don't look good, whatever, still finding a way to make your body look good even in that state. And I gotta say, I felt this way around New Year's because I had gained some weight and I really felt like I failed at a lot of my work that I did in that department. And I remember feeling completely defeated, and I did not want to go out dancing, and I didn't have anything to wear, air quotes here. And then I just had this phrase in my head, like, I just want to feel like I'm wearing pajamas. And I was convinced that I was going to be the worst dressed person at this Milonga. I was convinced that I probably would get less dances than I would if I wore something more revealing. But what ended up happening is there was like a dance party that broke out in the middle. And because I was wearing this very loose outfit that literally felt like pajamas to me, I just ended up dancing my heart out. I could move in such a free way. And in the end, other people came up to me and complimented me on that. They were inspired by my dance and how free it looked. And I thought, this is really should be a lesson every time. If you prioritize how your body feels and moves, and you allow your body to have that freedom of expression on a very physical level, meaning full range of motion and comfortable breathing, it will be inspiring to other people. And that's what stands out. When you put those three things together, your posture, your body language, and how you use your clothes, long term, those are the things that are going to stand out the most. Now, I'll leave you with this quick anecdote. I don't know if I've already shared it on this podcast, but it is sort of a philosophy that I live by. A few years ago, I was at Oregon Country Fair, and I remember I was sitting eating this little salad by one of the walkways. There was this path and lots of people just walking, and I just sat down and I got this little salad at a kiosk. And for some reason, I decided to do this experiment where I was sitting with a very tall posture on purpose. I was eating the salad and I was making eye contact with people walking by. So I would just kind of make eye contact, and some of them would look at me and would smile and nod, and other people would kind of look at me and then look away immediately because they would be just sort of caught off guard. But after a couple of minutes, what started happening is that people started coming up to me and going, "Oh my God, what are you eating?" And I kid you not, this was like the most basic little salad anywhere on like a paper plate. There was nothing special about it. But I would just say, "Oh, I'm eating this salad from this kiosk." And people started going to the kiosk to buy that salad. And so during the time that it took me to eat the salad, 3 different people came up to me and they went up to the kiosk afterwards. But the realization that I had, in which I forever now call eating the salad, is that if you can find a way to direct yourself into a state where you're eating the salad, and the components are what we talked about, is just body language and having your facial expressions and your posture projecting confidence, even though you might not feel it. You're sort of practicing good postural hygiene because you know it's good for you, and you're smiling because you know it's good for you. You, I think, will notice that there is a shift. So I invite you, if you are someone who's been struggling with body image and you resonate with this quest to not succumb, to not be so run over in your mind by the fears and anxiety about your body changing, your body aging, and that it might lead to you not getting enough dances. If you feel that, I invite you to examine some of these aspects in yourself and put to the test some of these practices. Let me know how it goes. If you have other things to contribute on this topic, or if you have a personal story to share about this, make sure you reach out to me. You can let me know through DMing me on Instagram at ImSoTango, IMSO Tango, or just pop it into the comments below. I'll be chatting with you next time. See you at the next banter. Until then, ciao.